What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Call the Damn Leads, the show by sales professionals for sales professionals. I'm your host, Drew B. Wilson. More than 2 decades in sales. I've seen it, been through it, heard about it. Now I'm bringing it to you, my favorite people in the world, the sales community. Because let's be honest, this is the greatest industry of all time. Doesn't matter where you come from, what background, what personality type, you can make an amazing life for yourself in sales. Today's guest, no stranger to that journey. I need you to welcome my friend, Mr. Chad Hufford. What's up, brother?
Drew, it's a pleasure being here. Thank you for the opportunity to encourage your audience and hopefully enlighten them a little bit. And if necessary, give them a little kick in the pants.
Well, sometimes we do need that little kick in the pants, and I want to kick things off the right way, man. I want you to tell us your craziest sales story.
Well, so before I jump in, I want to set the stage for what this looked like. So I'm in the financial services industry. I've got a financial planning firm, wealth management firm up here in Anchorage, Alaska. And this story comes out of 2008. Now, if you remember 2008, the global financial structure was melting down and banks were closing. I mean, worldwide chaos. It was a global nightmare. People were losing their jobs left and right, record unemployment. We'd not seen anything like this since the Great Depression. And in some ways, it was even bigger than that because it was globalized. So people were really hesitant to trust anybody. Everybody on the news was telling you, the sky is falling, the world's ending, Armageddon's coming. And if that doesn't do it for you, Bernie Madoff's going to steal from you. So it was a rough time. And I had flown up to, I live in Anchorage, Alaska, and I'd flown up to Fairbanks, Alaska. And this was like January, February, it was probably early 2009, just after the turn of the year. And I had done a presentation. I had done some classes for a teaching group up there. And some of the folks wanted to meet with me. I didn't have an office up there. So just like a doctor from the 40s, I was doing house calls. And I'm driving out to this lady's house, really nice lady. Her name is Carol. Won't give her a last name, but sweet woman. And she had some questions and she invited me over, and it was 45 below. Now, 45 below zero, that's not wind chill. That's 45 below. And if you guys have driven in ice and snow, you know that snow tires are supposed to be, usually the rubber is softer so it can grip the road. And I didn't have studs, just a rental car. I'm 300 miles from home. And what rubber does at 45 below, it is a lot like concrete. So it was like driving on blocks of concrete. I was sliding all over the place. And this lady lived up this hill. There's this hairpin turn. Drewby, long and short is, I didn't make it. Now I'm stuck in her driveway. Nobody can come in. She can't get out. I'm supposed to be bringing her clarity and confidence in this crazy time. And now this kid is stuck in her driveway. And she's like 60 at the time. So she comes down. She's trying to dig me. I don't have a shovel. And I've got gloves, thankfully, but it's 45 below. And if you guys have never been in 45 below, don't, first of all. It's not something I'd recommend. But
That's not sustainable.
You can't even take a full breath. Like the air is so cold. And I'm feeling terrible for her that she's out here helping me. And I'm embarrassed. I'm broke. I'm desperate, and I'm trying to claw at this snow, trying to get. So long and short of it is, we did eventually get the car out. She never became a client. Didn't make the quote unquote sale, but I didn't get frostbite. So I mean that was good. But I'll tell you what, that plane flight coming back was pretty lonely. Like that was like. It was rough. It was hurt to my pride, my ego, not to mention my bank account. And all those things were pretty thin at that time.
Man, there's a lot to unpack from that. First of all, I think the coldest I've ever been was like negative 27. I grew up in the Midwest in the Toledo, Ohio area, and it got cold, negative 27. I can't even fathom negative 45 degrees. I would not be caught dead in anything negative 45, anything. So kudos to you for having the cojones to step out into something like that knowing that you got to do what you got to do. I can imagine to a degree the embarrassment of knocking on that door saying, "Ma'am, I'm here to discuss financial planning or whatever," and also my car's in the ditch at the end of your driveway. I will deal with that later. What was the reflection like on that driving back to the airport in that depth of just kind of that moment? I have to imagine there was something that you took from that has kind of allowed you to carry on to where you are currently.
Well, one of the things that I've had to do, and I had to do it very early on, is stop looking at the outcome and just focus on the input. And develop a tolerance for ambiguity, because I couldn't worry about outcomes I can't control. And I think in a sales environment, and with us, it's not like we're selling a product. With a financial planning arrangement, I mean, it's you're not selling anything but you, and you're really more inviting somebody into a journey with you. So it's a very high trust. It's a long process, and the 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 tendency to try to sell somebody, I'm using air quotes for you guys just listening, is really, really high. But the problem is, you sell somebody, if they don't buy in, then you end up having to sell that person over and over and over again. And you end up wasting a lot of time and energy that could be spent really directing and guiding that person or working with others. So it's really weird. Like, I had to learn to not sell as well, but create an environment where people could buy in and
Mm.
and have their own skin in the game. And what that meant is I just had to release my very little semblance of control over the outcomes and focus relentlessly on the inputs. What was I? Because I can't control if this lady signs. I can't control if I slide into a ditch. I can't control the temperature. I can't control any of that stuff. What I can control is how many people that I'm going to step in front of and say, "Sir, ma'am, I understand you're concerned if you're on track for retirement, and that's something I can help you find out. Is that a conversation that you'd like to have with me?" And the more people that I had that conversation with, the outcomes eventually take care of themselves, not right away. And that's where that tolerance for ambiguity is really, really important. But the ambiguity was so high. And it's easy to say looking back, but there were some really trying times. I just had to remind myself, just focus on the inputs, the outcomes will take care of themselves. And I eventually learned how to gamify it.
Mm. I love the idea of gamification. I absolutely nerd out on it because I grew up a video gamer. Like, I was one of the first kids in my neighborhood to get cable internet, so I had online internet communities and MMOs. And I looking back on it now, being 13, 14 years old, we were running communities of 50, 60 people in these online video games and taking on world bosses. Like, we were business owners and entrepreneurs long before we knew. But it came back to the gamification. When we had a way to like track our points or track our accomplishments and to really measure where we were in accordance to our goal, we got those goals accomplished a lot more, and we had to keep moving the needle farther and farther along. And so for me, one of the things that I use as gamification from a sales standpoint is the 100-10-2 rule. In any given workday, you're trying to make 100 outbound contact attempts. Of those contact attempts, which could be a mixture of phone calls, text messages, emails, DMs, right, smoke signals, door knocking, 100 individual, specific, intentional attempts. Because out of that, even a blind squirrel finds a nut now and then. So my guess is you should be able to have about 10 conversations. So if you have 10 really good conversations where you build rapport and you go through your process and you find out whether or not the person's a good fit to work together, if you can get 2 out of those 10, like, that's a 2% close rate out of 100 people. Like, that's not asking for a whole lot.
Mhm.
If you can do that consistently, you make a lot of money over time. Now, a lot of people are like, well, I can't make that many calls, or you only got to get 2 out of 3 in a day. Either you make 100 calls and talk to 10 people and you don't close anything, or maybe you close like 4 or 5 deals, but you can't make your 100 calls that day. As long as there's a consistency, 2 out of 3, the gamification of it, like if I can just get 2 out of 3, I win. Go ahead.
And here's the thing about that too, because it not just in my industry, I'm sure it's in every industry. Like as I started really gaining some momentum, and by God's grace, He's really blessed this business. And I mean, it's mostly all referrals now. There isn't any cold calling anymore. I mean, I have a great team that works with me, but they don't know how rough it was getting started. Like there's no experience that prepares you for that kind of rejection. And I actually I kind of figured out before this episode, I've about 75,000 rejections is what I figure I've gotten over the past 17 years. Maybe 80, but somewhere between 75 and 80,000 rejections. And those rejections, I didn't count them unless they were in live time. So not an email, not a text. They had to be a phone call, face to face, knocking on somebody's door, like the rejections that hurt the most. But as I've gotten more success, a lot of people have asked me, like, what is the script? Like, what do you say? What are the words? How do you flavor it? How do you what stories do you tell? And people are so focused on, I think, that conversion rate. And my thing has always been, man, if you're calling 10 people a day and you double it to 20, even if you don't get any better at your quote unquote pitch, you'll probably double your sales. Now, we could take those 10 calls and you could try to flavor your pitch. You could take some classes on influence and motivation and public speaking, and you could maybe increase your conversion rate by 10 or 15%. But if you double your inputs, if you double the amount of calls and conversations that you try to start, and some of those conversations won't start, you can't control that. But if you double your inputs, you will probably double your closes automatically. And here's the cool thing I learned: you automatically fine tune and refine your approach, your pitch, even your level of confidence, because you're not worried about the outcome of that call. And you've got 90 more calls to make. You don't want my help, I'm on to the next. That's fine. So you automatically get better in your presentation. But the number one variable is how many times are you going to put yourself in that position to be rejected? That's the winning formula. Everything else falls into place after that.
That is solid freaking gold. And what I love about that too is kind of the nuance where you talked about, like, it's just repetition. You know, I see people, and the gym is always a great way to analogize this for people, because it's like, hey man, if you went into the gym, you could grab a 15-pound dumbbell and you can probably hammer out 10 or 15 reps, no problem. But like, you could grab a 25-pound and maybe hammer out 10 reps. Or you can grab a 50 and hammer out 5. You know, you can chase those bigger deals. You can chase that opportunity. But let me tell you something. You pick up that 15-pound dumbbell and you rep it 100 times. You tell me you're not going to feel that after a while. And you know what? It's the consistency. And it's that consistency that ends up leaving you toned and ripped, like my man Chad looking over here ready to take on the world, because it's just putting in the reps. And that's how you get to the point where when you do start bringing someone onto your team, like you had mentioned, it's easy for them to see what the process actually looks like, because you're not trying to cheat it. You're not trying to shortcut it. You're literally just doing the work day in and day out. So Chad, I would love to know, for you on your journey, building teams, getting to this point where you are, what would you say has kind of become like your secret superpower in sales?
Well, I think we've already kind of touched on it, but it is focusing on the inputs themselves, focusing on what I can control. Like that is the number one thing. And we've got different personalities in the office, but like that's always what it goes down to is not worrying about the outcomes, not worrying about the minutia in between, but looking at setting goals and even setting benchmarks based off of only what we can control. And even the non-sales positions, like we set goals on inputs, not outcomes. And that's been so freeing. And I love the fitness analogy, because this happens all the time where, somebody will talk to me after a workout or something like that, and they'll be asking like, well, should it be squats or should it be deadlifts, or should I do lunges? Should my toes point out? Should they point in? I'm like, man, I haven't seen you do legs ever. Just get in the squat rack and do something. And you know what? You'll get better.
Yep.
you'll get better. Just do the damn reps, right? And like that's, and I think my background in fitness really helped with that. Like at some point you can study, you can try to hone what you're doing and do the research. And I'm not saying you don't try to worry about that stuff, but at some point when you're trying to get in, you just got to get underneath the bar and squat. And at some point you just got to call the damn leads. And
Come on, baby.
and that's the only way to get better. And I think that is my superpower, is really learning how to see victory in the input. And like, I'll just give you an example. So every day I had a benchmark for what I was trying to hit. And it wasn't about conversions. It wasn't even about how many people I talked to. It was simply how many outreaches. And that was the win. And if I had 40 or 50 calls and everybody told me that they hated me, never called me again, cussed me out, hey, I hope your cat dies, or simply didn't answer, you know what? That was a win. And I started learning how to, so I guess here's my superpower as we're talking through it, is learning how to count wins differently. My wins became only what I could control, because
I love that.
I knew the success would take care of itself, and it has. And it absolutely has.
All right, and this is I love that. Okay, I want to dig into this, Chad, because this is what I love seeing people process through and realize these things, because what I see here is you understanding that it was your ability to reframe your mindset and to have a new perspective of the situation that allowed you to break through to the other side. And what I know from working with hundreds, if not thousands of entrepreneurs and business owners over the years, as you said, you've had 80,000 rejections over time. And what we have learned to do through that experience is to reframe our mindset and be focused on looking for the good in everything. As you said, hairpin turn, 45 below, going off the road, not even getting the deal. That could be something that could easily let someone just decide, man, I'm not ever doing this again. This is the stupidest, biggest mistake of my life. And instead you went, it can't get much worse than that, right? Let me just go try again. And just let me go try again. And let me just go try again. And I believe that is really something that I would love to see more people develop in themselves. And I can't give that to you. You can't give that to me. That perspective has to be realized through trial and error. And what's really fun about success in general is that it's a perspective. My version is going to be different than yours, Chad, and your version is going to be different than mine, and is probably different than your clients. But when you do a great job of understanding where they are in their journey and what their version of it looks like, what their perspective is, as you said, it kind of sells itself. You just got to help them take the journey and walk them along the path. And so I know there's probably a ton of people in the industry of financial advising and insurance and all that. We have a ton of those people who listen. If you had some advice for them on how to stop being so salesy and to really lean in on that mindset of service and relationship building, where would you go with that, do you think?
You might not like this answer, but I'm just going to be super
I'm going
raw
to like
with you.
it, so come on.
You have to believe that what you have to offer is so valuable that the client or the prospect is selling you, not you selling them. Like, you are trying to see if they deserve what you have to offer. And here's the caveat. If what you have to offer isn't truly that valuable, you need a new industry. You need to leave. If you can't truly get behind what you were trying to sell, and we've got a guy on our team that spent 10 years in the car industry getting people into debt. Now his job is helping people get out of debt. It's his penance. It's his purgatory. No, but that's why he left. He's like, at the end of the day, he's a very, very good salesman. He's like, at the end of the day, I'm selling these people extended warranties and windshield coverage and bells and whistles. And all. They couldn't even afford the car to begin with. I'm not helping them. I can sell them, but I'm actually making their life worse by getting them to spend money they don't have on things that they don't need. And that incongruence guys and gals are listening, it will eat away at you. You will never be excellent in your craft if you don't fully believe in what you're selling. And if you don't believe that somebody's life is absolutely better because you entered into it, then you need to sell something else. So that I think is super critical. And sitting down with somebody and realizing in the depths of my soul that they needed me much, much more than I needed them. And even in the early days, when every new client was just like a godsend, and it was, it was rough. It was rough. And if we have time to get into it, I can explain. So there was some really, really tough trials that we went through, but still knowing that they had a chance to impact my life, but I had a opportunity to completely transform them. And I really felt like a physician, where a patient is coming in, and I'm not going to force them to take the treatment. I'm not going to force them to get better. They have to really want it for themselves. All I can do is give them the opportunity to take the cure that I have to offer. And I really did and still do firmly believe that. And when you have that type of passion, belief in yourself and what you're able to provide for somebody, it's a lot easier to face the rejections, to face the criticism, the all the unknowns that we have to face. And I'm just blessed to have something so powerful to offer somebody that I plan on doing until I'm 85 years old, as long as I can still string sentences together.
As long as you can still call them damn leads cohesively, then you'll be out here
Exactly.
helping
Yeah, without
people.
drooling over my phone or something like that. Yeah.
I'm. You said I wasn't gonna like it. You're right. I don't like it. I absolutely love that answer, and it's because so many people will choose to stay in the comfortable discomfort, and instead of going and finding something that they truly do find joy and passion in selling, they'll stay where they are for the paycheck. And that's why they stay stuck. That's why they constantly feel like they're on this hamster wheel, like they can only ever get just enough to get by, but they can never have enough to be in abundance, because they're doing it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds very harsh, and it can be a little painful to swallow that truth pill, but I know for a fact that when I changed industries and got into working with something that truly made me feel like excited to wake up every day and to do what I do, my income changed, my confidence changed, my relationships changed, like everything in my life changed for the better, because I was going in a direction that was filling that void of the thing that was missing. I just wanted that joy. That joy is the distance. I remember explaining this to a friend of mine one time. Joy is that space in the middle between where you are and where you want to be. Because if you get to where you want to be, you're going to realize very quickly that that moment doesn't last very long. Because as soon as you get to that goal, you're going to be like, damn, there's another goal.
I back in another life, I used to train professional athletes, and I had the opportunity to work with an Olympian skier. He skied for Canada, but we won't hold that against him. And he told me one time that one of the most elating moments of his life was standing on the podium, hearing "Oh Canada" as he received the gold medal. And one of the most empty moments of his life was the very next day, waking up thinking, was that it? And realizing that if he sacrificed everything for 4 more years, his body, his friendships, um, and grueling workouts, at best, Drewby, he could get back to where he was the day before. And there was just there's a hollowness and emptiness to it. And if you can't find joy and gratitude in the journey, if it's all about the finish line, it's going to be a pretty empty ride for you.
Chad, man, I'd be willing to bet you and I could sit here and nerd out and chat all day, but I want to leave it on that, because, man, that is such a profound statement for people to understand that it's an everyday journey. Every single day, we're blessed with opportunity to go out, to serve, to help, to provide. And as individuals, we get to make that choice of how we're going to proceed. So I personally know that I'm excited to come learn more about what you do and how you help people. So for me, And for anyone who's been hanging out with us that enjoyed the show, what's the best way for us to come and find you, learn more, kind of follow? I'm sure you're putting out more amazing content like this. So how do we come check it out?
Well, veritasalaska.com is the easiest place to find us. We're also on Instagram, veritas.alaska. You can find me on LinkedIn. And don't let Alaska fool you. We work with folks all over the United States. We keep some cachet in the name with Veritas Alaska, and it gives a 45 below story even that much more credibility, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're a badass son of a gun. I know that much about you, Chad. And I'm very grateful that you took some time to hang out with us, to share some of this wisdom, to share some knowledge that you've acquired over years and years and years of rejection. 80,000 of them somewhere around there, you said. So thank you for spending time with us. Thank you for sharing that wisdom. I'll make sure that we include all the links and everything in the show notes for people to come and check you out. And you know what? Before we get out of here, I want to ask you one more thing, because I'm not a taker, but I like to help people, and I know you do too. So you've given us a ton of great insight. Look for the rejection. Focus on the inputs. Let's say someone's brand new in sales. Like today is day one of their journey. They've never sold anything before in their life. What would you tell them?
I would tell them to go get a book called Game of Numbers by Nick Murray. That book has absolutely changed my life. And to say it is worth millions of dollars is not an exaggeration. My business has been built on some of the mindsets and frameworks I got from that book. It's been absolutely transformative, not just in my business, because when you focus on inputs, when you focus on what you can control, not just in sales, but even in relationships, in your physical health. I mean, just think of you can't control how your spouse or your kid responds, but if you treated them the right way and they respond differently, that's all right. You don't have to worry about that because you did what you needed to do. And same thing with taking care of your health. Like that book has a ripple effect far beyond finance or far beyond sales and business. But that's what it was for. It was written actually for financial advisors. But I don't care what you're selling, if it's air conditioning units or cars or toothbrushes. That's what I would encourage people. I read that. The book came out maybe 6-7 years in to my career, and you can look at the numbers, and there's a huge inflection point. And yeah, the author is Nick Murray. The book is Game of Numbers.
Chad, once again, man, I cannot thank you enough for sharing. I appreciate that last little tidbit. I knew that was for me, I guess, more than anyone, because now I wrote it down. I'm already on the side trying not to be weird, but ordering it on Amazon so that I can get it to the house and read it. Chad Hufford, everybody. Veritas Alaska. Check my man out. Go follow him. He's dropping wisdom every single day. And as always, share the show. Subscribe. Tell people about it. Tag Chad. Let the world know that you enjoyed our conversation. And if you've got a crazy sales story of your own, head over to callthedamnleads.com/podcast. Send us your info. Tell us a little snippet. Let's get you on. Let's share your story. Because again, it's the greatest industry of all time. Doesn't matter where you come from, what you've been through, you can make an amazing life here, just like Chad Hufford, everybody. Thank him again. Go share the show. We'll see you guys next time. Take care.
Thank you.